We are diving into a story that just shattered the holiday calm and really challenged everything Angelinos thought they knew about Southern California weather.
It's almost hard to believe.
An EF0 tornado, confirmed, touched down in the middle of a densely populated neighborhood, Boyle Heights, on Christmas Day, December 25th, 2025.
Yeah, it was more than just a shock. It was a true meteorological anomaly that happened during a historic atmospheric river event.
Right.
It took what should have been a quiet Christmas morning and just replaced it with wind speeds you'd associate with the Midwest, not the West Coast.
And for this deep dive, we have an incredible stack of sources. On one hand, we have the really authoritative, confirmed data from the National Weather Service.
The hard numbers.
Exactly, the hard numbers, the measurements, the track of the twister. And on the other hand, we have these raw, sometimes, frankly, terrifying eyewitness accounts from residents, from business owners who watched it all happen.
Our mission today is really to blend those two perspectives. We need to analyze the precise measurements of this extremely rare tornado, understand what actually happened on its short but destructive path, and maybe most critically, examine the official response.
The response to an event that was so localized and just completely unexpected.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with the facts, because when the NWS survey team got on site the very next day, that was Friday, December 26th, they left no room for doubt.
No, this wasn't just some strong wind. They confirmed it was rotational damage.
A real tornado.
That's right. It was officially confirmed as a tornado and rated EF0. Now, for anyone tracking the Enhanced Fujita Scale, EF0 is the lowest category, it typically causes minor damage.
But the sources show the winds reached 80 miles per hour. And when you look at the scale, the EF0 category runs from 65 to 85. So 80 that's pressing right up against the ceiling of that category.
It really is. It makes you wonder how close it came to being a low-end EF1, which kicks in at 86 miles per hour.
That 6 mile per hour difference is huge, right?
It's immense, especially when you look at the kind of structural damage required for an upgrade. The fact that it stayed in EF0 tells us those intense 80 mile-per-hour winds were highly focused and moved through very, very quickly.
And the path length confirms that too.
It does. Dr. Ariel Cohen, who led the NWS assessment, measured the damage track at just a quarter-mile long.
A quarter mile, that's it.
Or, about a third of a mile, and only 30 yards wide. It was basically a hyper-focused line drawn across just a few city blocks.
That's not far at all. It means the entire event from spin-up to dissipation was incredibly fast. And that NWS track analysis was so crucial for understanding who was affected.
They traced the start point to a residential area. The damage began near a home on Lee Street, which is located between Lorena and Spence Streets.
Okay.
And from there, it tracked east and northeast before it just ended, pretty abruptly, in an alley near Whittier Boulevard and Lorena Street, right after hitting a commercial strip mall.
That whole corridor from Lee Street into the Whittier and Lorena intersection, that's dense. It's houses that flow right into local businesses.
It is.
Which is why the one crucial detail that came out immediately was so remarkable. Despite 80 mile per hour winds tearing through that specific path, no injuries were reported.
It speaks volumes about the time of day around 10:20 in the morning on a holiday.
Right, maybe fewer people out and about.
And also the speed of the event itself.
Yeah.
It gave people very little time to react, but it also meant the worst of it didn't linger.
Okay, so when we look at that wind speed, 80 miles per hour, it can feel like an abstract number. But the sources, they immediately take us from the meteorology to the sheer terror people felt.
Yeah, that's right.
We have some harrowing details about what happened when that twister first touched down on Lee Street in the residential section.
Lee Street was designated the hardest hit area, and the impact there was immediate. It was structural. I think the most shocking piece of evidence came from the home of a resident named Francisco Gonzalez.
The video, right?
The video. It showed what is just definitive tornado damage. The entire roof was blown clean off the home.
Wow.
Just gone. With all the roofing material, the debris sent spiraling high up into the air. That is EF0 damage at its most severe.
And his neighbor, Bobby Torres, gave this visceral account that really separates this from, a typical California winter storm. Torres said it was a total different perspective from just hard rain and wind. He described the sound, not just wind, but a big, slam. And then he said the whole house shook for a moment.
And that feeling of rotational movement is so key. His account captured that specific violent power. He even confirmed seeing debris flying out there on his own surveillance footage.
And he mentioned his water heater, right?
Yeah, he specifically said The wind yanked the door right off his exterior water heater unit. I mean, that's not just a gust of wind, that's a vortex.
You can just feel the shock in his statement when he talks about, suffering through a tornado in Southern California, something he never, ever thought was possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It completely changes your mental map of what bad weather can even mean in Los Angeles. The perception is you worry about earthquakes, you worry about wildfires,
Not tornadoes.
not tornadic activity. But the destruction continued right down the track, moving into that bustling commercial area near Whittier and Lorena.
This is where we see that shift from, structural home damage to just business chaos. The strip mall near that intersection. It sustained heavy damage to signs, power poles, big trees.
And we have that surveillance footage from the Arco gas station on the corner. It shows the sheer chaos unfolding. The timestamp was around 9:50 a.m.
What stands out in that footage is the urgency.
It is. You see passengers who are just, pumping gas, and then they're suddenly scrambling, rushing to take shelter behind the concrete pillars of the station, trying to shield themselves from all the flying debris.
And the owner of that gas station, he said it was very, very unusual. He confirmed he had never seen anything like it in over 35 years of working right there on that corner.
35 years.
And that debris, it proved to be like destructive shrapnel. The sources gave a perfect example of this with Meso's Tempico restaurant.
That's a compelling anecdote. A sign, and not from the restaurant itself, but from a smoke shop nearby, was ripped down by the wind.
Just torn off its hinges.
And thrown directly into the restaurant's windows, shattering the glass panes. You could see the damage all over the restaurant's facade. That is the definition of a debris impact driven by rotational wind.
The swiftness is just so frightening. That kind of targeted destruction lasting only a few minutes from the residential blocks to the strip mall.
It perfectly illustrates that the 80-mile-per-hour rating isn't just theoretical. It's the physical force that can turn a business sign into a projectile weapon.
So we have the measurements and the shocking localized impact. Let's move to the bigger picture. Why did this happen in Los Angeles, and how did the authorities respond to a crisis that just doesn't fit the LA disaster playbook?
This is where the meteorology gets really insightful, because it connects this anomaly to that historic weather system that was plaguing the whole West Coast. Dr. Ariel Cohen from the NWS explained that this tornado was a direct consequence of that strong atmospheric river event.
We hear atmospheric river and we think rain, lots of rain. But you're saying the system provided the actual energy to spin up a vortex.
Precisely. It's not just the water. It's the profound shift in the lower and mid-level atmosphere. Dr. Cohen noted that the atmospheric river constantly brought more and more energy, pulling some of it over a broader area.
Okay.
So the key mechanism here, which is usually absent in Southern California, is something called vertical wind shear, plus low-level instability.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Think of the atmospheric river like a powerful, high-altitude pipeline. It's full of moisture and fast-moving air.
Got it.
When that energy meets the complex air near the ground, the boundary layer, it creates a huge difference in wind speed and direction between the surface and higher up. That difference generates the shear, the spin, needed to get air rolling horizontally.
And then something has to tilt it upwards.
Exactly. Local lifting mechanisms, like converging winds or even just topography, can tilt that rolling air upward.
Yeah.
And there you have it. You get the tight, brief rotation of a tornado. That level of persistent, low-level shear is just exceedingly rare here.
That makes the Boyle Heights event less of a complete freak accident and more of a predictable, though still very unlikely, consequence of a historically strong system.
It does. And while it's shocking, the NWS sources do confirm it's not totally unprecedented. They mentioned similar small twisters in Pico Rivera in March of 2025 and Montebello in 2023.
But this Boyle Heights location is uniquely historic.
Because it was so close to downtown.
Right.
Exactly. NWS sources emphasize that these minor twisters, they typically form further south or east, in the Inland Empire, Orange County. The fact that this one tracked through Boyle Heights, essentially on the doorstep of the city center, that highlights how unusually far west the necessary conditions got this time.
And this immediate localized violence, it brings up the biggest question for public safety. How did the NWS manage the warning in real time? People in tornado-prone areas, they rely on their phones buzzing. But we know the NWS made the decision not to send out a wireless emergency alert, a WEA notification.
And this is a decision that requires a really difficult risk assessment. The NWS explained that they consciously really reserved these warnings that caused the wireless emergency alert to be for the most life-threatening situation,
They were trying to avoid alert fatigue.
which is a very valid concern.
Right.
The fear is if you send out a full WEA, a notification that wakes people up, interrupts their day for every minor hazard, people eventually just stop paying attention.
They tune it out.
They tune out all of the alerts, including the ones for devastating EF4s or catastrophic wildfires. Their criteria for a WEA is incredibly high. It's meant for imminent, widespread, life-threatening danger.
It's a calculated gamble. I mean, in this case, the lack of injuries supported their decision after the fact, but you just have to imagine the fallout if that quarter-mile path had been 5 blocks longer and hit a packed school or a hospital.
It raises profound questions about that balance. But regardless of the warning, the official city response on the ground was impressively fast.
Mayor Karen Bass, City Council member Isabel Gerardo, they were on site really quickly with the NWS.
And Mayor Bass's immediate message was really a shift in policy expectations for Angelenos. She was very direct. She said they can't look at ourselves as different and immune for extreme weather events like we might have in the past.
Which is an acknowledgement that the climate reality has changed the definition of a typical LA winter.
Absolutely. And Councilmember Gerardo immediately focused on marshaling resources, which is the necessary next step. She urged affected residents and business owners to contact her office or call 311 for help.
But the complexity there is the funding, right?
It is. Determining whether recovery funds come through the Small Business Administration, which offers low-interest loans, or FEMA, which can provide disaster grants. That depends entirely on the official, final damage assessment.
And that's a crucial distinction.
It is. FEMA assistance generally requires the state to meet certain damage thresholds. For a highly localized, short-path EF0 tornado that thankfully caused no injuries, navigating that resource process becomes its own challenge.
Especially for uninsured residents like the ones on Lee Street.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've seen how a historic atmospheric river provided the rare meteorological ingredients for this. That low-level vertical shear spinning up a highly localized EF0 tornado right in Boyle Heights.
The facts are startling. 80-mile-per-hour winds, a quarter-mile path, and specific immediate destruction captured on eyewitnesses and on camera. The event really confirms the mayor's warning. Extreme weather is now a present reality for Southern California.
And it requires a complete shift in local preparedness. The government mobilization, even for a disaster this localized, it was rapid and targeted, but it also brought up these really difficult questions about public alert protocols.
And that balance, as we look toward a future with increasing climate variability, is the most crucial takeaway. Since Mayor Bass has stated that Angelenos must now expect these events, and the NWS chose not to issue a widespread wireless alert to avoid alert fatigue, this leaves us with a necessary, provocative question for you to consider.
In a world where these rare, localized hazards are becoming more common, how should municipalities like Los Angeles balance the need for immediate, life-saving warnings for something like an 80-mile-per-hour twister against the long-term risk of residents tuning out critical alerts?
What specific, measurable threshold of damage or injury should trigger that community-wide WEA, and when does public trust in those alarms start to erode? It's a public safety calculus that every city, not just LA, will be wrestling with as the definition of normal weather continues to change, something to mull over as we observe how Boyle Heights recovers and how Angelenos adapt to the threat of the unexpected.